Hello, I'm Mike, and this is Will. We are the Tabletop Donkeys.
Hello.
And today we're bringing you issue 11 of Warhammer Age of Sigmar Mortal Realms, where we got the first half of a Sigmarite Mausoleum terrain set. So we can add a 3D element to our battles from now on. But before we go into the issue, if you want to skip straight to the playthrough, there will be a time code in the description. Heading into the issue, first up, we have some background on the various chambers and conclaves that make up each storm host. So each type of soldier is part of a conclave, and then each conclave is each chamber is made up of multiple conclaves. And we have some more colour schemes of various storm hosts, their heraldry, and it goes on a little bit about how each chamber within a storm host is led by a Lord Celestant, and you can tell which chamber a soldier is part of by looking at the colour of their plume, which apparently is chosen by the Lord Celestant. Now here's some more history of the Mortal Realms. So here we have the Age of Myth and the coming of Chaos. The influence of Chaos started to affect the people of the Mortal Realms, and eventually the Chaos forces arrived and started attacking various Mortal Realms. And it goes on about how Sigmar lost his mighty hammer Gal-Maraz in a duel with Archaon, the chosen champion of Chaos, and he retreated to the Realm of Heavens, and with some of his Dwarden and Elven allies he started creating the Stormcast. And there's more background here on the Forces of Death. So this is the forces that make up Nagash's various hordes. So you have the Ossiarch Bone Reavers, the elite undead forces led by Mortok Katakros. We have the Flesh Eater Courts, which are sort of ghouls and vampires and that kind of thing. And of course the Nighthaunt, which we've been seeing so far. And then we have a short story here about the Celestial Vindicators Stormhost fighting against undead on the Realm of Fire. And here we have the build guide for our Sigmarite Mausoleum. So these are the bits we get in this issue, and you can see there's part of a gate that's left over that we need to save. Well, actually there's two halves of the gate because you get this sprue twice. And you have to glue it together. And it has the complete build guide for all of the mausoleums, so you'll have to refer to this in the issue when we get the second half. So the red bits just represent parts we haven't got yet. And it's fairly easy to put together, not too many parts. You'd have to be a little bit careful with this sort of putting two halves together so it doesn't split or anything. And here you can see what the completed one will look like with the parts here. And it says to not glue any of the walls and that sort of thing, so you can move them around and set them up how you want to. And you can see just before we go into the battlefield, you can actually see it set up here. But we'll go into our playthrough for this issue now.
So on to our playthrough for this issue, and the Castigators, as you can see, are still outside the tombs, and there are more Nighthaunt still coming to get them. It doesn't matter how many they kill, there seem to be more. But in the picture, as you can see, we'll be using the new terrain we've got from this issue. So there are the pieces of terrain that we have. It shows on this map where to place them, and we'll see that on the full battle map in a second. But for the first time, we are going to be opening up the large battle map to its full extent, so we'll be using all of it, although we only deploy on one side. But we can move back into the other half now. As it says new rules, it tells us that we're going to be learning about navigating over and around terrain. We're also going to introduce running, which is show both of those things are shown over the page in the playthrough. And this battle is going to feature the Castigators and the Chain Rafts. The War Scrolls here, but you also note that they have now corrected the save for the Chain Rafts. This is a 5+, which is what it's supposed to be, which is what we used in the previous issue when it was wrong. And we start with Stormcast turn 1, going through the steps as usual, but we do learn how to run in the movement phase. So a unit can be declared to run, and what that means is you roll a d6 and add that to their movement distance, the number you roll, and they can move that far, but if they do that they cannot shoot or charge later in the turn. So if the Castigators run, then they will not be able to shoot. It also explains how to move over the terrain, and essentially you just measure the distance up and down and take that away from the model's move. So in the case of the fence, as it shows here, it's 2 inches up and 2 inches down, so it takes 4 inches to move over the fence in its entirety. Then we move on to the Nighthaunt turn. They can run as well, but Nighthaunt units that have fly basically ignore the distance for moving over terrain, so the terrain rules are essentially irrelevant for Nighthaunt. They can just move through it as though it wasn't there, provided they don't finish their move on top of another model as it states, which presumably means the terrain as well. And then we just carry on as before, the Stormcast turn, shooting, and the Nighthaunt turn. One thing it doesn't mention is what happens, as in the previous issue we learnt about fighting in the opposing player's turn, but the Castigators don't actually technically have a fighting step, so it's not clear whether, if the Chain Rafts are in combat in the Stormcast turn, whether they actually get to fight back. So as you'll see, turn sequence for Stormcast Eternals is movement and shooting only, it says there. We'll probably let the Chain Rafts fight in the Stormcast turn if they're in melee, because that's what they're supposed to be able to do. Well, for some reason they've omitted it here, which is a bit bizarre. And that's it, you continue until one side is wiped out. And they also give us the War Scrolls again for Sequitors, Myrmorn Banshees and Glavewraith Stalkers here. The only thing to note is that the Banshees and the Stalkers can both fly like the Chain Rasps. We may try and do a different game with these just to see how the terrain rules interact a little bit more with some other models. So here we are set up with all the Castigators and the Chain Rasps on the board. The Castigators start on the Stormcast Lightning spaces and the Chain Rasps, well, it says 4 must start on the Nighthaunt spaces marked, and then the rest of the Chain Rasps have to start within an inch of another model.
I mean, technically by the letter of those rules I could just daisy chain them up the board, but that would be a bit gamey, so I'm not going to do that.
And then, as I said, we've got the whole of the board folded out, so there's a bit of a sort of temple-y bit over here behind the fence. There's nothing over there, but speaking of the fence, you can see the 2 fences. There's one there and one there. Then we have the pieces of the Sigmarite Mausoleum on that side of the board. And then over here as well, 2 more tombs over this side. The Stormcast Eternals get to go first, and in my movement phase I'm going to move back. I'm not going to run, because if I run I can't shoot, so we're just going to move our 5 inches. You can see the Castigator might clip the fence, so I moved him in a straight line, but I will shift him back at a slight angle to avoid that problem, so I'm just going to not go over the fence. And the other Castigators move back over here to join him. Then they'll shoot at the Chain Rasps. We don't know about weapon range yet, so as far as we know they have infinite range. They can shoot wherever they are on the board. So I'll have 3 shots hitting on 3s. 6s like that one, of course D3 hits, so that's a miss, but this is our D3 for 1, so 3 hits in total. Wounding on 3s, 2.
I'll have a 5+ save. Get on the box. Nope, 2 dead Chain Rasps.
Well, that's it for my turn. On to Nighthaunt, turn 1.
So my turn, if I moved up normally I'd need to make a 12-inch charge to get into base contact with the Castigators, so I'm not going to do that. Instead I'm going to run with the Chain Rasps.
Yeah, because if you run you can't charge, but that's probably not going to matter.
So I roll a d6 and add this to their movement. 3, so they can move a total of 9 inches.
Moving up to there, quite close to the Castigators, but as I said they won't be able to charge this turn. We finish a move like that, but they can't charge as I said, so we'll be on to Castigators turn 2. We're going to move back again to try and get away from the incoming Chain Rasps, using all of the board space that we have now. And then we'll shoot again. 3 shots hitting on 3s, and 1 hit, and wounding on 3. It did wound.
5+ save, which I made. So if I move up normally it would be a 7-inch charge to get into base contact, but I think I'm just going to run again to try and guarantee the charge on my next turn. So rolling a d6, getting a 6, can't really complain about that. So you can see that's how far it will get me. I have to stay 3 inches away from the Castigators, otherwise I'd be into melee, so I'll move this guy first to show how my fly ability on the Chain Rasp means I can just move straight through that fence without any penalty, otherwise I'd have to take 4 inches of moving up and over it. So it'll end exactly 3 inches away from the Castigators to charge next turn.
Yep, so on to Castigator turn. We're going to carry on running away, and we're going to shoot again, they're running out of board space now. So 3 shots on 3s. Oh, that's better. 2 6s and a 4. 1 hit plus 3, so that's 4 hits in total. Wounding on 3s. 4. 4.
4, 5+ saves, which I made none of. So 4 Chain Rasps die. Let's take this 3, 4, 3 off the back and another one.
And then we're on to Nighthaunt turn.
Well, no need to run this time. We'll move so we're 3 inches away. And then we will attempt to charge. So needing anything higher than a 2. Yep, 5 is going to be enough to get everyone in. Yep, so we can all get into base contact.
Yep, which we have to do still at this point in the magazine.
2 attacks per Chain Rasp, so 8 attacks hitting on 4s. 5 hits, wounding on 4s. Oh, 5 wounds.
4 plus armor saves. Failed 3, so that's going to be 1 Castigator dead and 1 will take a wound. So we will take away this one, and 1 over there will take a wound. Only 2 shots hitting on 3s. Oh, they both missed.
Going by the magazine, there's no combat step in the Stormcast Eternals turn, whereas normally there would be. So the Chain Rasps wouldn't get to fight, but we're going to let them fight because that's how it would be in the full rules, and we did learn about that in the previous issue. So we go to the combat step where the Chain Rasps get to pile in, so you'll pile into that one. 8 attacks, hitting on 4s. 4 hits this time. Wounding on 4s. Why? 3 wounds.
3 4+ saves. Failed 1. So the wounded Castigator will go down. And we move on to the Nighthaunt turn.
Yeah, well, we go straight to the combat step again. So this Chain Rasp will pile in. Again, we have 8 attacks. Wow. They all hit. Wounding on 4s. Oh, 7 wounds. Blimey.
So he has to make 7 saves. He failed 3 of
Oh,
them.
it's close.
So he dies. Victory to the Nighthaunt. So we'll set this up again. Give the Castigators another go. Here we are set up again. We're Castigators turn 1, and it's going to play out much the same as before in the beginning. I'm going to move away and shoot. Moving back to here, and then we have 3 shots again. Hitting on 3s. 2 hits, but that's a 6, so that turns into... still only 1 hit. So 2 hits, wounding on 3s, and they're both wounded.
2 5+ saves, which I make 1 of, so 1 chain rasp dies. I'll take that one away.
Here we on to Nighthaunt turn 1.
Much like last time, I'm going to run. I don't feel like I'm trying to make a 12-inch charge, and it does say in the rules you do need to declare that you're going to run before you start moving. We run an extra 5 inches, so we can go 11.
So getting up to there, but then that's at the end of their turn because they can't charge. And Castigators are going to move away and shoot again. So moving back another 5 inches, and then we've got our shots. Hitting on 3s, that's 3 hits. Wounding on 3s, 1.
5+ save, failed. So that's a dead chain rasp. We'll take away that guy on the back. This time we're just going to move normally. Once again, these guys can just fly over the fence, or through it more likely. Ooh. So now we're going to charge, and it's going to need a list of 5 to be able to get into base contact. Oof.
Just about.
So we finished our charge. The front 6 chain rasps were all able to get into base contact, but in the combat phase, the 2 unengaged chain rasps will pile in around. And then we have 8 chain rasps in melee. It'll be 16 attacks. First 8 hitting on 4s. 4. Second batch. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So that's 9 hits in total. Wounding on 4s. 5.
5 4+ saves. Failed 3, that's a dead Castigator and 1 taking a wound again. So the one closest to the camera died. And then onto their turn, they'll just shoot in melee. Hitting on 3s. That's a 1 hit. And wounding on the 3. Nope. And then at the end of the Stormcast turn, the chain rasps get to pile in the fight.
Chain rasps who were engaged have piled in, so they can get into base contact. Once again, we have 8 in base contact. First 8 hitting on 4s. That's 6. Second batch, 5. 11 hits. Wounding on 4s. Only 4.
4 saves, 4+. Failed 3. So that's them dead, because they've only got 3 wounds left. So victory for the Nighthaunt once again. What we'll do now is just to show off a little bit more how the terrain rules are supposed to work. We will set up a slightly different looking battlefield with some different models, just so we can explore those rules a bit more. For this game, what we've done is we've set up 4 Glavewraith Stalkers on the Nighthaunt end, and on the very far end we've set up 3 Sequitors. So the point being we can show off both sides running, and also hopefully some terrain. So if we move in a slightly strange way down to one side of the board or the other, then the terrain will come into play. The 3 Sequitors go first. Obviously we will include a combat step for the Stormcast turn with them, because otherwise they can't do anything. But they're going to run, so rolling that, an extra 1 inch, so they can go 6. And that will bring them down this way, heading for this fence over here. And then we'll be on to the Nighthaunt turn. Glavewraiths over there.
Yeah, and they're going to run as well, because we're miles away from the Stormcast. They get to go an extra 4, so they can go 10 inches. Yeah, so we're going to move over there and try and hide in amongst those crypts to make it harder for the Stormcast to charge us.
Back to the Stormcast turn, we're going to run again, adding another 3 inches so they can go 8 this turn. So moving up to here near the fence, back to the Glavewraith Stalkers.
So my turn I'm going to move normally, and I can ignore the extra movement for having to move through build, so I can effectively just move straight through the crypts over them, because I can fly. Otherwise I'd probably have to use my entire movement just to get over it. And we're going to declare a charge, because we are within 12 inches, and since I ignore terrain, I think I need a 6 to get into base contact. Rolling for our charge, needing a 6, getting an 11, so it's definitely enough. So there we've completed our charge. 11 would be enough to get me into base contact, even if I had to go around the building or through over the fence, so we can all get into base contact, even without piling in. Glavewraiths have 2 attacks each, so we have 8 attacks hitting on 4s. 3 hits. Wounding on 3s though. 2 wounds.
4+ saves. Made one failed one, so the Sequitor takes a wound. Put it on along with the shield. And then definitely get to fight back in the Nighthaunt turn. We'll do the Stormsmite Great Mace first. There's 2 attacks hitting on 3s. That's 1 hit. And on 3. Nope. And 4 attacks with normal maces. 3 hits. Wounding on 3s. 3.
3 4+ saves. Made 1, so 2 Glavewraiths will die. These 2.
And then we're on to Stormcast Eternals turn. So straight to the combat step, and this Sequitor will pile in. Do the Great Mace first, 2 attacks hitting on 3s, 6s get more hits. No, that's 2 hits though. Wounding on 3s, 1.
Yeah, I guess we might as well do it now. And he failed, so both those Glavewraiths die because it's 2 damage, so you don't need to roll the rest of the weapons.
And so that is victory for the Secretors. We got to see a little bit more about how the terrain works. That'll be all the games for this issue, and we will give you our thoughts and recap all of that for you now. That was the playthrough for issue 11 of Warhammer Age of Sigmar Mortal Realms. How did you think that went?
Well, you rolled pretty badly for the Castigators, I must say.
I didn't.
I rolled incredibly well for the Chainrasp, but I can also see why they, or at least as the rules as given by the magazine, ignore the combat step in the Castigator turn, because I basically get a free round of attacks, 2 rounds of attacks for every one of yours.
Yeah, and the Castigator's damage output is not huge. I mean, again, it helps if I roll better, but we did get to see the whole of the board. It's interesting to actually have a bit more space. Now that we know the rules for charging, space becomes quite important, because before, when you just sort of floated into melee without making a charge move, there was enough space for the Castigators to get some shots in before you got into melee, but now I really had to keep moving back.
And being able to run as well and get the extra movement.
Yeah, running's quite an important rule as well. It's very simple, but it's a way to really get units moving. And for the Nighthaunt, you're probably going to want to run quite often because you have so little in the way of ranged attacks.
I only have 1 unit with a ranged attack.
Yeah.
So.
If you're too far away to make a charge, or it's going to be a really long charge, then running is often a very good option. Whereas for the Castigators, it means they can't shoot.
I guess if you got a good roll, it would help. But if you roll a 1, then you get barely any extra.
At the cost of your shooting.
Yeah.
So.
I like the terrain. I like the look of it. Fortunately, I don't know if it's going to be too relevant. Because once it's complete, there's several crypts and some walls. I suppose the Nighthaunt could hide in amongst it because they can move freely over it. Eventually we'll learn about line of sight and range, so I might be able to hide some units, particularly characters behind the crypts so that you can't shoot at them as Castigators. Or spells, actually, I think. Same with Arcane Bolt, you need to be able to see the target. Is there really that much incentive for these Stormcast to go in amongst the terrain as opposed to just running away and making the Nighthaunt come to them?
Well, no, it impedes the Stormcast Eternals movement and not the Nighthaunt.
Yeah,
so.
the Nighthaunt, just ignore it. And it's also positioned kind of in a way that there is just a sort of path down the middle of the board.
Well, it was only in our third game when we deliberately tried to bring the terrain into play, because otherwise, what's to stop me just moving back? Because although I started in the middle of the board, there was just a big gap in the fence that I could just move back. I'm not going to go over the wall if I don't have to.
Because it takes up so much of your movement as well.
Yeah, it's 4 inches of my 5-inch movement, unless I'm running. But even then, I guess I could potentially stand behind the fence. You can't get chain rasps into base contact, but on the other hand, you could just go round them or through the bits of the fence that I can't defend.
And I imagine it isn't obvious by the magazine, but it would impede a charge as well if you had to charge over the fence. And as far as we know, fly should apply in the charge phase. It doesn't say it doesn't, so...
No,
and it's one of those weird nebulous rules cases where does charging technically count as movement, or is the charge distinct from movement in the movement phase?
Yeah, and the magazine, as usual, is relatively vague on it. Well, it mentions fly in the movement phase, but then is completely silent about it in the charge phase. So,
in the full rules, you can also move over models, and that does include enemy models. So I think, say, my charge with the Glade Race, if I was worried about you running away, I could just end my charge on the other side of the Secretors. And it's also useful when we learn about retreating. You can technically retreat through enemy models with fly. It's a really handy rule to have, and I think pretty much every Nighthaunt unit has fly. It does give them a lot of mobility.
I guess we actually talk about the terrain models themselves as well.
Well, it's the first half of a set.
Yeah, so this is half of it, and we'll get the other half soon.
Yeah, in issue 15.
It's actually quite an old scenery kit. It comes from the old Warhammer Fantasy game before this. It's still pretty appropriate for this kind of thing. It still has all the same sort of imagery to do with death and all the roses and stuff, actually.
Painting skulls.
Well, it looks to me that there's quite a few fiddly bits if you really want to go to town on these.
Yeah, you could really go mad for the details.
And obviously the magazine shows us how to paint them very basically, but it will improve. Everybody will get more detailed. Anyway, I think that's all for this episode, so if you've enjoyed this video, then please leave a like and subscribe. Let us know what you thought, rules and models and tactics, and if you've played all of this, then let us know what you think.
If you know whether fly works in the charge phase, let us know, because that will be important to learn.
Yes. Anyway, we've been the Tabletop Donkeys, and we'll see you in the next one.
Bye for now.